Mm-hmm. You know, in the world of desserts, there's nothing quite as simple and yet perfectly elegant as a creme brulee. That contrast of a nice thin, crisp sugar crust against the delicate texture of the custard underneath is just, it's just the ideal. As a professional pastry chef, I riffed on creme brulee my entire career, right? Stick around. Today we're gonna learn how to make creme brulee in 5-minute kitchen. The ingredients for creme brulee are quite simple. You'll find them in any grocery store. There will be heavy cream, eggs, right? Some sugar, and vanilla. So today's episode is unwittingly going to be sponsored by our good friends at Nielsen Massey Vanilla, right? America's oldest family-owned vanilla company, makers of fine vanilla products and other wonderful extracts. I have coffee and I have almond here, right? We're going to be using a vanilla bean today, and specifically what's called a Madagascar bourbon vanilla bean. A bourbon vanilla bean has nothing to do with alcohol, with whiskey, but Madagascar is one of the bourbon islands just east off the coast of Africa. When you're using a vanilla bean, they are indeed expensive, so you want to make sure that you get your value for a vanilla bean. So we're going to start by taking the bean. I'm going to close in on this. We're going to split it, right, lengthwise, just with a sharp knife. This one's really nice and plump, right? That means that it's fresh, and inside it's got lots of nice tiny little seeds. I'm going to scrape this with the tip of my knife, and you can see, wow, look at all those seeds on one half. Right? I'm going to scrape these seeds right out. I'm going to put them right into a pot. Plus, I'm going to put the rest of the skin. There's a lot of flavor in the skin. Right into the pot. Make sure you get all of it because it's very precious. Okay. I'm going to add to my 1 vanilla bean a pint of cream. The recipe for the creme brulee is going to be posted, so you can just refer to that later on, but I'll just tell you, it's very easy to know. It's a pint of cream, a half a cup of sugar. I'm using today this nice organic sugar. It's got a nice little light brown tint to it. I'm going to put it all together right now in the pot. All right. I'm going to put this onto the stove. I'm going to bring it up to a gentle simmer. Don't boil it over, right? Just to melt the sugar. And we're going to leave it to infuse for about 15 minutes to get the flavor of the vanilla to infuse well into the cream. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes. You can see it's just starting to bubble around the edges. I want to make sure that I don't allow the pot to boil over. So when I've got this hot, I can turn it off. I'm going to let it rest for a while and let the flavor of the vanilla infuse into the cream. Okay, while we're waiting for our cream to infuse, let's move on to separate our eggs. Creme brulee is a rich custard which is made only with egg yolks. So we first have to separate the yolks from the whites. Let me show you how we do that. I'm going to take an egg, we're going to crack it on the tabletop. It's better than cracking it on the side of the bowl because you're less likely to get little bits of shell mixed in with the egg. And then pry it apart with your thumbs, and then we're going to pour the yolk gently from side to side. These eggs are cold, and so the whites are going to be fairly viscous. It's a lot easier to separate cold eggs than it is warm eggs. Let's do one more. Okay, so my cream has been infusing now for about 15 minutes. You can see the little specks there. The liquid smells great. And I can take out the skin right now, right? And I'm gonna keep this. We already mentioned vanilla is precious. I don't want to just throw it away. I'm gonna wash this off. Just rinse it off in cold water and set it aside. And I'll actually reuse that vanilla bean. I could cook another custard with it, or probably what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wash it, I'm gonna dry it off, and I'm gonna tuck it inside a container of sugar, and it'll infuse the flavor into the sugar. I'll make some nice vanilla sugar. Maybe the next time that I make a custard, I could use that vanilla sugar instead. All right, so I'm going to take this cream. I've allowed it to infuse. The temperature is cooled off, so it's not too hot anymore. I'm going to pour it gradually into the egg yolks. Right? I don't want to add boiling cream to the yolks. We're not cooking a creme anglaise custard here, so I don't really want to cook the eggs. I just want to gradually add the warm cream to them. And now I want to get it all nicely blended, but I also want to be careful not to whip too much air into that. One of the general rules of custard making is that you want to avoid over-aerating the mixture. What happens is if you trap air inside of a custard and you put it into the oven, then it's going to have the tendency to souffle, to rise up. And then because there's no flour there to hold the structure, eventually it's going to collapse. You may have seen that before in another type of custard, a pumpkin pie or perhaps a cheesecake, where it goes into the oven, it rises up and then falls and cracks and gets a crack right across the center of it. That's from incorporating too much air into the mixture in the first place. The vanilla looks good. I also have a little bit of egg that's not blending in here thoroughly. So the next step is to strain this mixture. Okay, we're ready to bake. So let's talk for a second about baking dishes. Okay, I have two dishes here. They're both referred to as ramekins. So Atomic Classroom wrote in and said, hey chef, do you think that you could make creme brulee? And I happen to know that the reason they were asking that was because they just got these dishes for making soufflés from watching the soufflé episode a week or so ago. So in fact, the proper dish for creme brulee is this one, okay? This is a creme brulee specific ramekin, and it's ideal because you get a thinner surface and then a broader distribution of the sugar crust, so that with every single bite, you're gonna get some custard and you're gonna get some sugar crust. Now, having said that, I only have one of these dishes because we're quarantined at home. So I only have one of these anyway. I've got a bunch of these soufflé ramekins myself, so this is what we're gonna use. So the recipe is going to yield between 4 and 6 portions, depending on the size of the dish. These are 4-ounce ramekins. So I'm gonna pour the custard right up to the top. Actually, you can do this by putting the custard cups right into the pan. That minimizes moving around. It's going to mean less likelihood of splashing. Let's go ahead and we're going to pour the rest of them into these ramekins. And you can see that I've got it inside of a larger baking dish. And the reason for that, right, is because the second important rule of custard making goes like this: low and slow. It's the way to go. And that means that we want to be baking our custard at a low temperature. And what better way to ensure a low temperature than to bake it inside of a bain-marie, what we call a water bath. So I'm going to pour the custard into the ramekins, fill them right up to the top. And now I'm going to pour water into the pan around them very carefully. I don't want to splash it in. It's a little tight. This baking dish is perfect for these ramekins. Wow, that's a tight squeeze. Okay. Hey, but the more water you can get in there, the better off we'll be. It means that the hot temperature of the oven is going to be diffused so that the custards bake nice and slow. We're ready to go into the oven. We've got our oven set at 300 degrees. It's probably going to be about 30 or 40 minutes. Okay, these custards are done. See, they're beautifully smooth across the top. They've just the tiniest little bit of jiggle left. Okay? Again, I will let these cool off in the pan. When they're easier to handle, just gonna transfer it to a different pan. We're gonna put them in the refrigerator. And from here, I've gotta let them cool off, like completely cool off. So that's probably gonna be a few hours. All right, so let's get them cold. We'll see you in a bit. Hey, this is how we finish a creme brulee, okay? I just put a little bit of sugar on the top. We're gonna caramelize it. Let's take a second to explain the process here. Creme brulee means burnt cream. And so the way we finish creme brulee is by making a thin caramelized sugar crust. Now, the classic way of doing this is using a tool that's called a salamander. It's actually a metal disc on the end of a long handle. And you hold it over an open flame, get it really, really hot, and then you just touch it across the surface of the top. Nowadays, we're going to use a propane torch. Maybe at home you could use a broiler if you don't have a propane torch, but this is the way we do it in the restaurant. So I'm going to take a little bit of sugar onto the surface. I'm going to spread it out with a spoon. Get a nice thin and even layer. And cover it with a torch. So I mentioned earlier, this is a creme brulee dish specifically. And the benefit of having a dish like this means that the custard is thin, so that with every bite, the sort of the ratio of crisp sugar crust to custard, you're going to appreciate it much more in this shallow dish than you will in this one. That said, we're going to use what we have. So be careful. You can burn it this way and get it a little bit too dark. But a nice, thin, even crust is what we're looking for. So that's it. That's how we make creme brulee. Atomic Classroom, I hope you enjoyed the lesson. If anybody else has got a request, send it in to 5 Minute Kitchen. And I hope that you spend some time, some baking at home, but at the same time, I'm going to throw in a plug. Go out to your local restaurant. Restaurants need to be supported in this time too. Thanks very much. Look forward to seeing you again next time on 5 Minute Kitchen.